I think that from the Big Ten tournament, like we kind of learned what it was going to feel like in postseason. And obviously, a lot of us already kind of have that experience with so many times we've been at regionals, but it just makes it that much more real. And it's obviously we've dreamt about this for the entire time we've been here, but especially this season, those big wins early on, we knew what it could feel like being in the World Series, and that was a lot more motivation for us to do well and to get to there. But I think it is one game at a time, like you said, but it just makes it that much more real and how tough it is going to be to actually get there. So we really got to dig in and work hard, and we know nothing's going to come easy for us. So it's going to take a lot to get there, but we're really, really excited to put in the work to do it.
Our friend Jenny Ritter is our first guest up today to help break down the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament. Let me go kind of big picture with you first, Jenny. You know, the narrative around the Big Ten is usually, nationally speaking at least, that it's top-heavy. But you can't really make that argument this year. Northwestern won the regular season. Nebraska won the conference tournament. Michigan's on fire. Illinois and Maryland beat highly ranked teams throughout the year. What are the reasons behind the change in the league this year?
Well, I think that it starts with the coaching staff. I think this is a group where, the RPI has been historically low when you get into the Big Ten regular season, and they had to change that. So as a collective group, they got together and really talked about preseason schedules. How do you make them tougher? How do we improve our RPI within the regular season as well, so that the RPI can be higher at the end? Our strength of schedule is better throughout the year, and ultimately that makes things more competitive as well. But in a lot of cases, the Big Ten regular season became stronger, not only because of how they played early on in the season, but also because that strength of schedule was a little bit better during the regular season, which ultimately at the end resulted in a higher strength of schedule, a higher RPI, and got more teams in. And I think it's great. It's the right direction of where it needs to go in the Big Ten. And all of these coaches are on board. I don't think you can say that for other conferences, that they really work together to do more for the sport. But the Big Ten does. And it's one of the things that I'm the most proud of with these coaches.
Well, this is a brilliant strategy then. Working together with your opponents helps everybody out. You're saying basically they got together in the off season and said, let's all schedule better in the non-conference because it will help us all down the line?
I think, yeah. I think that the fact that they're able to get in a room and just have conversations or even one-on-ones with different coaches and say, this is what we need to do to be better in the Big Ten. Don't get me wrong. You get down on the field and it is an all-out battle no matter what. You're not best friends with these people on the field. But at the same time, they know what has to be done in the Big Ten. They know it has to be done in the big picture. And that ultimately comes, top to bottom in that Big Ten. And I don't have the knowledge of exactly what they talked about, but these are the things that had to be done to make the Big Ten stronger. And they've done a beautiful job. I think it's only going to go up from here. And I think the NCAA should be a little bit worried about the Big Ten. I think they should see, the rest of the conferences should see how much stronger they've gotten, and that things can happen when you play a team like this. You can't walk over a Big Ten team right now.
Yeah, the sport has changed, right? It used to be Pac-12 dominant. Now it's become SEC and Big 12. And if the Big Ten can join that, what a great thing for the sport, let alone for this conference. And it's working, too. The Big Ten with 7 teams in, tied for the most ever in an NCAA tournament. Of all the teams, give me the one Big Ten team you think is most likely to advance.
I think that's Northwestern. And I think it should be. When you look at seeded teams, 75% of the time they do advance into the supers. They've got a tough road. I don't think that there's any secret that the one team that they have to focus on is Notre Dame in this regional. But they are talking about the things that need to happen right now. They're talking about having power 1 through 9 in the lineup. They're talking about showing up, playing their game, being confident, bringing all these things, knowing that it's an all-out battle. I think when they lost to Michigan in that Big Ten tournament in a close game, it ultimately came down to realizing that people aren't just going to lay down for us just because we're the Big Ten champions and because we're good, because it's not top heavy, like you mentioned. And they have to show up. And so that was kind of an eye-opener when they lost that heartbreaking game against Michigan in the Big Ten tournament to step up and realize, hey, it's going to be a battle no matter who we play, what we do, and we've got to focus on the next win only and then move on from that. But it's ultimately up to that win, the next win, and that's all that matters for them right now.
Yeah, they got the star pitcher, star player, star coach. That does make sense. They'd be your team most likely to move on. What about the flip side, the draw that you think is the most challenging for a Big Ten team?
It's got to be Minnesota. Any of these draws, nobody ever wants the 1 seed, but you never want the 1 seed when it's Oklahoma that only has 2 losses. Now, that said, we've seen glimpses of really great things from Minnesota. I keep bringing up that 2-run World Series against Northwestern where they run-rolled them 8-0 both times in the first 2 games. And I just think that they have the power to make something happen. But again, Oklahoma is just really good this year. I don't think that there's anything else you can say about them. Jocelyn Allo is going to be a tough battle for this pitching staff. I don't know if you walk her every time. Part of me thinks that might be the smart decision. But, you know, they've got 8 other great hitters. And they've got a really good pitcher. And so that comes down to playing your best ball, trusting what you've prepared throughout the regular season, and then showing up and having nothing to lose and just saying, we got a chip on our shoulder. We're going to do the best we can. And to me, success, they make it into that final, the regional final with Oklahoma, and they put up a good fight. I think that's a success for Minnesota.
Give me the Big Ten team you think that is most likely to surprise people.
I think that has to be Michigan. I think Michigan started a little bit slow in the season, but they have really stepped up. Hutch always says it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Really what's happening. They're peaking at the right time. Taylor Bump has been phenomenal for them offensively and defensively. And when you have players that are really stepping up in a leadership role like this, you can perform a long way. I think that the pitching staff needs to be consistent. I think that they've gone deeper in their pitching staff, which is good, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that they got UCF as their seeded draw. Their seeded draw is somebody that they beat convincingly in a 6-0 ball game early on in the season. And I think if you're Michigan, you're looking at your regional and you're thinking, actual teams, we're feeling good. We're playing better than we did when we started. All things are pointing in the right direction for Michigan. So I see them getting out of that regional and into supers.
Yeah, that's interesting. They might not surprise people based on the name on the front of the jersey, but when you consider where they were a month and a half ago, I mean, now they're on fire. They won 10 of their last 12 entering the Big Ten tourney, played great in East Lansing for that tournament. So I think that'd be great for the league if they can play hot. Give me, individually speaking, a player that you think could make a name for herself in that national landscape? Somebody that maybe Big Ten fans know, but nationally folks aren't aware of yet.
Yeah. So I actually have 2, I think. I think that, Emily Levitt in the circle for Minnesota, she's just a freshman. She's got a big, tall order in front of her. Again, not a lot of depth in that Minnesota pitching staff, but she's the one that's really got to step up for Minnesota in years to come. And so when I look at what she can do, I really think that she can step up and do a lot of great things. And how do you make a name for yourself nationally? You go and you compete and you really shut down a great offense like in Oklahoma. And when you do that, all of a sudden everybody's starting to talk about you. And so the confidence that she brings in from the regular season of how she played is really important to me. And the second is Grace Nito. And I don't think a lot of people talk about her. She's in the 9th spot, just a freshman, but she's batting .500 in her last 8 games. And she's really stepped up, and I don't think she really understands yet the importance of how she's turning that lineup over to get to the top, to get to a Skylar Schallmeyer, a Rachel Lewis. And I think that she just has the power in that bottom of the lineup to step up. I've always said this, top to bottom, your lineup has to show up in the postseason. And so for her in that 9 spot to really lead at the bottom of that lineup is really key, especially when you've got such a good top of the lineup for Northwestern.
You know, when you look inside the dugout, I feel like Big Ten, in almost every sport, coaches are such a strength, right? Whether it's a Tom Izzo in basketball or a Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh in football or what have you. Softball's no different. You got Kate Drohan, you got Rhonda Revelle. If I made you pick one coach, the coach that you most wanted making your lineup card, who would it be?
Well, I think it's a biased question because I know what she can do, and that's Hutch. And I will never, ever turn my back on Hutch because I've seen what she can do. I see how she expects you to trust her. She understands her stuff, not only just Hutch, but that coaching staff. And they are just absolutely 100% phenomenal in what they do. They understand the scope of what the postseason requires. They understand the strategy of it. They understand how they have to win. So I've got to go with them. Good close 2 and 3, though. I mean, Kate Drohan's been there too. She gets it. I didn't play for her, so for me, I've got to go with Hutch, but Rhonda Revelle as well. I mean, those are coaches that have made it to the World Series, and when you have that experience behind you, you really know how to coach it, how to get there, and you know when it feels right and you know when it doesn't. And this year specifically, Kate Drohan, she knows it feels right. And so for me, that's an exciting thing to see her really want to step up as well. But it's no surprise that I feel that the coaching staffs, Hutch and Kate, are the two coaches that are going to, bring their teams both to the Supers.
Carol Hutchins is so good. You could have picked her without admitting a bias, and we would have been just fine with it. But I respect the honesty, Jenny. A couple more before you go. The most important pitcher in the Big Ten for this upcoming NCAA tournament is?
Hands down, Danielle Williams. She's phenomenal. And let me tell you, when she is on, she is incredible. And it's something where they saved her a little bit in the middle of the season in terms of innings. And then they started to use her more at the end because they noticed that she was getting stronger as she pitched more. And so once you go into this postseason and you're thinking, okay, well, I need to have depth in pitching. This is something that Northwestern definitely has to have. I mean, you have a leader in that circle like Danielle Williams, ultimate competitor, just so happy to be leading her team, and does so well in her pitches. Her changeup, I cannot stop talking about it. It's devastating. It is so good. You can't see it coming. And if a team can't time it right, forget about it. You've got to time that pitch. You've got to drive it. But hands down, Danielle Williams is the one that's going to bring her team to the World Series.
Most important player from the Big Ten this coming weekend?
Rachel Lewis. And I think that what's interesting about it is she's in that grad year, and she'll do anything for this Northwestern team. She's no doubt one of the best athletes that we've seen. And so for me, one of the things that I think her biggest challenge is going to be is that everybody knows that she's one of the best in the Big Ten, if not the best. And so when you're going to play her at Notre Dame or anybody in your region, anybody in your super, you know that she's going to be the one you're going to have to be the most smart about. And so in that case, Rachel Lewis has to be really smart about what pitches she chooses to attack. Now, the plus side is that she's really good at attacking pitches. And she's got a lot of protection on either side of her, and I think that matters. But for somebody that has the leadership skill that Rachel Lewis has, as well as her offensive power, I think she's the one to watch.
A Wildcat chosen for the Big Ten player, a Wildcat chosen for the Big Ten pitcher. It's no doubt you started off by saying Northwestern's a team that is most likely to advance. And sure enough, Jenny, you are calling the Evanston Regional this weekend. Have a blast up in Evanston. Thanks so much for your insight. You're always such a delight.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm happy to bring in Scott Post to talk about this. And this is everything you'd want from a top of a race. You got 1 week left, two teams that are tied. They're great teams. They've been that way the whole year long. How great is this final weekend going to be for them?
Well, it's outstanding because it's going to be a lot of moving for a lot of teams to depend on what their season and what it means if they can go on to the NCAA tournament. Maryland and Rutgers are legit. They have been all year. They each have 40 wins, and they do it in different ways, but they're very good teams. Maryland is on top because they have an RPI of 9. They've played a great schedule, and Rob Vaughn has done a tremendous job with them because they can beat you a number of different ways. They can win with small ball, but they can also slug if you want to slug, and they have pitching to go with it. Rutgers on the other side, Steve Owens, probably the coach of the year in the Big Ten.
Sure.
Done an incredible job bringing them from way in the bottom. Now they've been on the top all year, and they've had incredible performances from Nick Samillo. Danny DiGiorgio has done a great job, and they've gotten pitching too. And so if you get all of those things together, they're firing on all cylinders. They're definitely the class. It's going to be interesting to see how each fares against Michigan and Purdue, respectively, to who wins this conference title.
And I want to get to those matchups they have in a bit, but let me just kind of take a step back. So about, I don't know, month and a half ago, we're doing one of these shows, and I was like, I wonder what the all-time record for Maryland wins in a season was. And I looked it up, and I was like, what are the odds I'm going to need it? It was 42. They have 42 right now with a week to go and the Big Ten tournament and possibly more after that.
Well, Rob Vaughn has done a tremendous job of building this momentum. His team a couple of years ago got into a regional and figured out how to win in these close games, in these situations that you run into in tournament play and the NCAA tournament. And that has built that confidence because this team has gelled together. You've got Bubba Aline, who's done a tremendous job. Luke Schlager hitting out of the top of the order from the catcher spot. You never see that. He's got a bunch of gamers to that lineup. Bobby Zmarzalak can hit a bunch of home runs. LaRusso's doing an incredible job. These guys have gelled together and have played together for so long that you're seeing the benefits of that. You're also seeing teams getting together and finally players developing because this is the first year in a couple where you've had midweek games. Remember, COVID was what it was. You didn't play. And then last year, there were no really midweek games for players to develop. So you're getting teams coming together, not just Maryland and Rutgers, but at the right time now this year because they've had those games to develop. That's why this tournament's going to be very exciting.
And you mentioned this earlier, but I know you love Maryland because they're one of those teams that can manufacture runs. They can score in different ways. That's close to your heart, I know.
It is, but I mean, you have to do that. If you think about it, very few teams slug their way to championships. Right. There have been a couple, but you've got to win those close games. You've got to get the guy on, you get him over and get him in, and they're going to be one-run contests, especially when you get in the NCAAs because you're going to see that A arm, and you've got to find a way to manufacture runs. Maryland can do that. Now, Rutgers can too. You don't get 40 wins without being able to do that, but you have to be able to do that consistently, and I'm interested to see how that's going to shake out as this season plays on.
So you brought me to Rutgers, and if I'm being honest, there were two teams a month and a half ago that I looked up their all-time win total. The other one was Rutgers. It was also 42. They're at 40 with this whole weekend to go and the Big Ten tournament and more beyond that.
Well, it's a great year. Steve Owens has done a tremendous job of building this momentum and building this team because they're a force to be reckoned with. I remember early Rutgers was winning, and I think a majority of the nation was thinking, well, yeah, they're off to a good start, but let's see what happens when they get in conference. Well, they've gotten a conference. They've dominated too. Well, let's see what happens when they get in the tournament. I don't think they're fooling anybody anymore. They've got 40 wins. They're doing it in a number of different ways. Unbelievable individual performances they're getting from their position players. I see them as a force to be reckoned with, and they're going to give somebody problems in the NCAAs.
Are they, you mentioned they're not fooling anybody. What about nationally speaking? I mean, this is a sport for various different reasons that a lot of warm weather teams generally dominate. But, like, what is the national vibe on how good Maryland and Rutgers are this year?
Well, the RPI will tell you that. And I think what is happening in the NCAA selection system is that the RPI is the end-all be-all. And we're seeing, unfortunately, teams nationwide canceling games. I think major problem that needs to be addressed. And I think that affects on how people are seeing the teams from the Big Ten. Maryland is at 9, but everybody else is below that. I believe Rutgers is at 44 from an RPI. Now, that's safe because 64 teams get in, but you figure the bid stealers and everybody else with automatic bids, you want to be above that 45 line. And so you have a number of other teams, the Michigans, the Iowas, the Illinois, that need good finishes in this tournament. They have done it, but then they can get above that line and be considered for the NCAA tournament. And I think that's what's going to be the major thing that occurs next week when we go to Omaha.
All right, so last thing on this race for the regular season title. You mentioned the matchups. Rutgers is on the road against Michigan. Maryland is on the road against Purdue. Both those are pretty darn good teams, look to be safe in the Big Ten tournament. Most difficult matchup for these two title contenders?
I think Michigan is, but I think Purdue's a difficult matchup for a different reason. All right, Greg Goff has done a tremendous job of having this team be very disruptive. He's got base stealers in Albrecht, Washington, and Bolton that wreak havoc on the bases and create all kinds of problems. The other part of this, too, that you need to think about when you're playing Purdue, they're on that cut line, right on the 8 mark for getting in the NCAA tournament. And nothing is worse than a quartered Boilermaker, if you will. But you do not want to face a team that's playing for their lives. Right. And that's what Purdue is right now. Michigan is very balanced, and Eric Bakich has that experience. And that's what gives me the nod for them being the toughest matchup, because it wasn't too long ago that they were a team looking to get into the Big Ten tournament. They figured they were pretty good, but they needed a good Big Ten tournament to get into the NCAAs. They were one strike away from being eliminated by Illinois. Mm-hmm. And then Jordan Wogu hits a double. They go 2 more games, and that ends up propelling them to the NCAAs and ultimately the national championship. I think that experience is invaluable because this team has to gel and play well late, but they're balanced because they have a number of players in the middle of their lineup that can hit 9 and 10 home runs, because you got Clark in there, Fry, and then Flores. They all have home runs. Jimmy Obertop has 8. I mean, I think they can get you a number of different ways. So I think Michigan's a very unique matchup and a tough one. No matter how you slice it, it's going to be very tough for both Maryland and Rutgers playing these two teams respectively, and it's going to be fun watching how this shakes out and who comes away with a conference title.
They're going to have to earn it, both teams are, if they want to be regular season champs. Outside of Maryland and Rutgers, give me a team in the league this year that has pleasantly surprised you.
Penn State.
Yeah.
I think that what Rob Cooper has done, Penn State has arms, and they could be scary in the Big Ten tournament, because if you get into the elimination bracket, you need arms. But he's got 10 different pitchers that have either started or thrown out of the bullpen that have experience that he could go to if they get into that situation. I think they have been a pleasant surprise. I can't call Iowa a surprise, but I think Iowa's a unique team because I don't think anybody wants to play them right now in a short series because of their pitching.
Right.
They have an outstanding pitching staff, and that's how you build a team. Is it, again, you get into tournament play, you've got to keep the other team from scoring, and Iowa has that in arms. And Mazur has been outstanding. And so I think they're equipped to play well. And if they can go deep into this tournament, then they make a case for the NCAAs. And then anything could happen when you get to a regional and you have the arms that they have. So I think they're interesting to watch. Illinois, by the same token, Dan Hartlib has done an outstanding job of keeping them together, and they're playing together at the right time. They're experienced, and they don't beat themselves. So I think you have Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, all in that same boat where they're on the verge of getting to that right RPI number to get in the NCAA tournament, and this tournament is going to mean everything for them to get into the NCAAs. It's going to be fun to watch.
Let me follow up on Iowa because I think they're fascinating, what you said. It feels like all year long, the three keys to them have been pitching, pitching, and pitching. And it's not just one guy, and it's not just starters. What is it you like most about the way that this team pitches?
Well, they're balanced, but what also people don't realize is what Rick Heller has had to do with his lineup with the guys being hurt. They have a number of injuries. Now, Peyton Williams has been unbelievable. Keaton Anthony, tremendous. They're the two big bats in their lineup. But what he has been able to do is piece that lower part of the order to have players step in. Wilmus has stepped in and done a great job for them. And I think that's a credit. The pitching's always been there, but he's found the pieces to hold this together for now. And then when you have a Friday night starter like Mazur, Butel comes out of the bullpen and can shut things down. They've got Brecht, who's a wild card who can throw 103 miles an hour for crying out loud.
That's insane.
And if he could put it together and go on a run, that makes them very dangerous. So they have the basis. They've done it well enough with piecing those injuries together. I think they're an interesting team to watch, and I'm really not sure that a lot of teams want to play them right now.
Yeah. Two of the teams you mentioned, Illinois and Penn State, I believe they play each other this weekend, and you're calling at least one of those games, right?
That's right. We're calling that game this evening.
What are you looking forward to in that matchup?
Well, I'm looking forward to the pitching matchup, but also these teams, they need the wins. And so hungry teams playing against each other with games that mean something at the end of the year, that's all you can ask for. And we're going to see some good baseball from fundamentally sound teams. But I love the matchup, and I think anything can happen in these, and there's going to be exciting baseball to watch.
You see the standings here. The teams that desperately need a win, right? I mean, it's not one. Michigan, Indiana, and Purdue are just hanging on. Northwestern and Nebraska feel like they get a good run, get some luck. They could be there. If there's one Big Ten team that you say really needs to play great this weekend, just for the sake of the Big Ten tournament, it would be?
Purdue. I think Purdue needs to play well just because where they're on that line, Northwestern and Nebraska have a chance, but they need some help, and so they're going to have to sweep or at least win 2 of 3 and then look at the scoreboard and hope. But everybody needs wins right now. But I think because they're on that line, I think it's crucial for Purdue, and that's why they're going to be a dangerous team to play because they're going to be hungry.
It's the best time of year, isn't it?
It certainly is.
I mean, every game matters. You got the final week, then you got the tournament, then you got the NCAAs. Always great seeing you in person, Scott.
Thanks so much.
Our big interview guest, the head coach, Brian Brecht, here to talk about it. Brian, first off, thank you for joining us. I know it's a busy week for you. The turnout, let me start with that. The turnout of fans you had for the last NCAA tournament, more than 5,000 fans there in New Jersey. What was that like?
Certainly exciting atmosphere. Yersak Field was packed. It was electric and just great having so many youth lacrosse players, high school players, our young and old alumni back on campus for a big game in the month of May. And I think our players really thrived off that environment. And hopefully have the same group travel over to Hofstra for quarterfinals this weekend.
But Brian, how do you explain the size of it? Like, not only was it big, it was almost twice more than any other crowd in the NCAA tournament this past weekend.
We've always had some great crowds, and our alumni have always supported us, all year and in the past couple of years. I think when you're playing a big game in the month of May, the weather was great, great stadium atmosphere, and certainly the youth and the high school lacrosse in New Jersey, here where we're located, there's so much talent and players within an hour radius that it's just a great day to come out and support the Scarlet Knights, and our players appreciated every bit of it.
In that game, you guys scored 6 of the first 7 goals. How important was that hot start?
Yeah, I think we want to take care of ourselves every time we face an opponent, and I think John DeHenio was clicking. We had a lot of possessions. Colin Kurse was great making saves. Our defense was getting some stops, pushing it up the field to our offense, and we just from the defense to the offense and all between the middle of the field and in between the lines. I thought they played good lacrosse for 60 minutes, and that's what we need to do at this time of year: is take care of Rutgers and play good lacrosse for 60 minutes and focus on us.
I think it's fair to say Ross Scott played good lacrosse. 8 goals for him. Where has he grown the most over the last few years?
Yeah, I think he's always been dynamic with the ball in his stick, being an initiator and dodger, and I think just the leadership role. I think he really learned from the attack unit that we had last year that mentored him. Adam Shalambides, Mullins and Kurse were great mentors, and he's done a great job living with Colin Kurse this year, and some of the players that he's been around over the last couple of years in the senior class this year. They've gelled awful well, and he's kind of grown and stepped up with his presence in the locker room, off the field, and on the field this year.
You mentioned Kurse a couple times, your goalkeeper. What has he worked on the most this season?
He's certainly a student of the game. He's always the last one to leave practice and getting extra shots. So I think he's just a worker and meticulous as far as getting the reps and seeing all the shots, in close, far, and just an ultimate communicator. He talks in our meetings and in our film sessions. He's talking in the locker room and when they're having coffee in the morning with his house, and obviously on the field on game day.
What don't people know about Ethan Rawl?
Probably how much of a great teammate he is, how hard he works, and his passion for lacrosse and for everything that him and his teammates work on every day. I mean, our guys really love each other. They enjoy the time they're with each other on and off the field, and they want this to keep on going for another week.
Well, up next is the second round. You're facing Penn. What are your main concerns in this matchup?
I think, like I said earlier, I think we've gone into every game, game planning about our opponent and who they are, but focusing more on what we need to do. Our defense, our midfielders, our attack, they know what they need to do to have success, and we just need to play good Rutgers across the fundamentals and the little, pieces of the parts that will make a whole 60-minute game, be successful for us.
It's already such a great year, program record for wins. You keep adding on to it. When did you realize that this would be a special team?
I think there was a lot of excitement in September. We had a lot of returning guys coming back. Ethan, as you mentioned, and Jared, and Kamish, Coyne, Frankowiak, and Denninger at the rope unit. So we had a lot of our defensive guys coming back from short sticks to the defensive poles and our goalie. I think everyone knew inside the locker room the abilities that Ross Scott had going from midfield to attack and being a 60-minute quarterback for us behind the cage. And it was tough losing David Sprock early in the season. But really happy with the production our second midfield has given us. Sanguinetti and Savetti, Amon and Tereski have really stepped up and grown their game. So I think throughout the fall, the leadership that our senior class has provided, the influence and the experience our newcomers have given us. We're a veteran group. They care about each other and they care about lacrosse.
You mentioned, you've seen these guys since September. You're around them basically every day, so you know them better than anybody. What aspect of your team has given you the most pride this year?
I think, the students they are. We have over a 3.5 GPA. We had graduated 27 seniors, either getting an undergraduate's or a master's degree here in the School of Business. So I think they've really done a great job off the field. As young men, being really great ambassadors to Rutgers University in the classroom, and obviously very proud of what they've accomplished on the field as student athletes for us.
The timing of all this is so interesting, Brian, because finals are done, papers are in, graduation happened. In a way, there's less distractions, I would suppose, so you guys can kind of focus on not only the task at hand, but I assume try to enjoy the moment every day this week. Is that fair?
Extremely, yeah, and that's what they are. They're enjoying this opportunity, and I think any distractions that would be maybe listed on paper, they've done that before because they went to the quarterfinals last year. It's a similar group. They've experienced the travel, the media, finishing up as far as moving from the dorms to apartments for the returning guys. So those are all experiences they've had last year. So not having any finals. Having graduation pass and handing in all their academic work. It's been fun preparing for practices, practicing and taking care of what we need to do to have success on Saturday.
How do you as a coach balance that, though? Because on the one hand, I would think you do want these guys to appreciate where they are and to soak up every moment. On the other hand, you didn't work this hard to only get this far. So how do you balance those two messages?
Yeah, I think the message is consistent. We're practicing the same time, we're doing the same things. Maybe a little lighter. Less is more at this time of year, especially with an older group. I don't think we have to drill as much. We just need to make sure that the quality of our reps when we go through our system, whether it's offensively or defensively, and our scout stuff is at a high level. And our focus has been high. The energy has been high. So we need to travel well. And, we have a guaranteed 60 minutes on Saturday, and we play well. We get a chance to spend another week in the locker room, on the field, and with this group, for another opportunity next weekend.
You got to get 5,000 fans to travel, right, Brian?
I'm hopeful that they'll be there. So I'm counting on them.
Brian Brecht, a win against Penn is going to give you guys your first ever NCAA tournament with multiple wins in a single tourney. Hope you get it. Best of luck. Thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
We teased this in the last segment. If I made you say, give me your top teams in the Big Ten for men's basketball next year, with the absolute caveat, this is the definition of written in pencil. We don't know who's staying in the draft and coming back. We don't know everything yet with transfers. There's a lot that can still change. But just as a taste here in mid-May, where do you think we stand?
Well, I've done this for Alex Rue and our digital team, so I have had power rankings out. But right now, in this moment in time, because of Hunter Dickinson's decision to return, I put Michigan 1. Michigan State, with the guards that are back now, with A.J. Hoggard and Tyson Walker, Joey Hauser, Malik Hall. I have the Spartans 2.
Okay.
And I have Indiana 3 with an asterisk, because we don't know the full roster, obviously. We don't know the full roster of Michigan. But Xavier Johnson, Race Thompson, an outstanding recruiting class. I think they're right there. But if TJD comes back, I would elevate IU to the 1 spot.
The number 1 team.
If Michigan gets Diabate and Houston, it's going to be 1A.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Somewhere right there. I'm going to give you a sleeper, though.
Okay.
So Purdue, I think, is probably 4th at this moment in time, with Zach Edey returning. They're going to have a younger team, but I would not dismiss them.
You're going to say Illinois, aren't you?
I was going to say Illinois, but I'm going to give you a potential sleeper again.
Okay.
I'm driving the bus.
Oh, Rutgers again. The Rutgers Andy Katz bus.
So Caleb McConnell still could come back.
Uh-huh.
Was not invited to the Combine. Defensive Player of the Year from the Big Ten. Just got his trophy, actually, today. I will not be shocked if he returns. And I love Cliff Amore and Paul. I love him in recruiting. And I talked to Steve Peichel, who's not a guy that's going to go out and say, how good they're going to be, but he thinks they're going to be really good. And I think Cliff Amore is going to be a first-team All-Big Ten player, and Mulcahy, and if they get McConnell, look out for Rutgers.
It's going to be another great year in the league to be watching. I want to say something with our last minute, though. You brought up Indiana. Has it been 9 years since Indiana has been thought of as a preseason team to win? I mean, 2013 is when I'm thinking, probably the last time.
Go back to that Victor Oladipo, Cody Zeller team. Got to the Sweet 16. A lot of disappointment that they didn't go further.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would go back to, if TJD comes back, I think you're looking back to that 2013 Indiana team in terms of the last time that they had this kind of preseason hype. And they're going to have a great schedule. I think Mike Woodson's more settled into the job as a college coach. I think there's a lot of positive things about the Hoosiers.
I mean, think of when he was hired about a year ago, right? He came off as maybe low energy on that press conference, and you're thinking he's never been a head coach. And look what he's done in a year with that program, that they could be the favorites in the preseason.
Well, and they really defend. They've got an identity. They just ran into a very difficult team. I was there for that game in Portland against St. Mary's, coming from Dayton. They got cut up. But yes, if TJD returns, which I'm going to say right now, I think he does.